Okay, we're going to talk a little bit about fat. So, is this a myth or a fact? Body fat is unhealthy and it has no beneficial purpose. What do you think? If you thought that was a myth, you are correct. So, body fat supplies energy to the body when food is unavailable. It acts as a cushion and it can protect your internal organs. And also, it helps regulate your body temperature. So, you're better off in really cold environments if you have extra layers of fat. So, it's actually important to realize, like us as a society, there's a lot of negative connotation with having too much body fat, right? There's like all these sorts of things about like what you can do to lose weight, and a lot of the in the media, the messages that we get are the ideal body type is one with like 0% body fat. Of course, it's important to remember nobody has 0% body fat, and if you have something like 3% body fat, that's like an unhealthily low amount of body fat. Everyone has to have a certain amount of body fat. You don't want to have too much. It's just not the ideal proportions, like health wise, like for a long term life. But there is a purpose to body fat. So if you think about how humans lived for a really long time, let's think like going back hunter gatherer type scenario. If you were hunting and gathering, you may not make a kill for a hunt for a really long time. You might go something like a month without eating food, and it's possible to go that long. But it's only possible to go that long without eating food if you ate a lot before that and you built up the layers of fat, and you could basically use that fat as energy during the times you can't find food. So that's a great thing for if you're a hunter gatherer. We're not really a hunter gatherer society anymore. There's food all over the place. So it would be great right now if our bodies were like, oh, you know what? We don't need this fat, so we'll just get rid of it right now. We don't need to hold on to it. Right? That would be good for us. But our bodies don't work that way. It's like an outdated system. It's like we're using like old computers or something like that don't work as well as they could. That's like kind of our bodies. So that's why we just have to be mindful of the fact that like while body fat is useful, having too much of it, there's really no benefit that much to us anymore. So now let's talk about fats. It's one of the three nutrients. And it's also important to remember that just because you eat something that is high in fat doesn't mean that you're going to automatically store that as fat. The reason it's just called fat is because the nutrient is made of something called fatty acids, and it provides a very valuable source of energy. This is very dense, lot of energy that's inside of this. And what's good about that is that you can fill up on this food. Like if you have a little bit of it and you kind of let your stomach digest it, you'll feel really full. Of course, I don't know if you remember this, but there's a long lag time. If you were to touch something that's burning hot, your brain immediately realizes that it's hot and you'll like take your hand off of it. Even before you can think about it, it's not like you touch it and you're like, this really hurts. I should remove my hand. No, you do it instantly without thinking about it. It's a reaction. Whereas when you feel full, the message that your stomach is like, oh, I feel full right now. Let's send that up to the brain. It takes a while for that message to get up there. So you can easily overeat on something by not realize, whereas if you eat slowly and you take your time, you'll fill up a lot faster. So fats are a valuable source of energy. There's different types of fats. You can have a saturated fat, which is primarily in the animal-based foods. There's unsaturated fats, which are in plant-based foods. Both are good and important to have, but you can definitely overdo it, and especially the saturated fats. When possible, try to choose food that is low fat. You don't want a food that has an abundance of fat, and especially food that is like all fat and there's basically no other nutritional value, like a lot of like fried foods. Our next nutrient that we're going to talk about is vitamins. Vitamins are organic substances. Organic means that it comes from something that's living. Necessary for human growth and development, absolutely. It helps regulate lots of different vital various processes in your body. So all these foods that you see right there are all foods that are very rich in vitamins. You can, of course, take a multivitamin. I'm sure a lot of you do. You don't necessarily need to if you have a healthy diet that you're eating all the right things, and you're going to get pretty much all of the vitamins that you need. But there's nothing wrong with taking a multivitamin as well to help fill in any of the gaps of something that you might be missing. And then there's minerals. So I'm sure you've heard of minerals before. You can't just like eat iron. Like you can't just have a piece of iron ore and just like chew on it and eat that. But your body needs iron. So how are you going to get it? Well, those inorganic things that come from something that's not living Comes from the earth, though, and they're absorbed by plants. So plants can absorb the iron, and your body needs a lot of these different minerals. You can then eat the plants that absorb these minerals. So that's one of the best ways for you to get those essential minerals inside of your body. And you can see the breakdown of a lot of these different types of food here, and which vitamins are located within which, and which minerals are located within them as well. And finally, our last one is going to be our last nutrient we're going to talk about is water. So water is absolutely critical. It's necessary for most bodily functions. People should be drinking somewhere between 8.5 cups to 11.5 cups of fluids per day. If you feel thirsty, that is a natural signal that your body needs more water. I think there's probably a scary amount of people that walk around that are just mildly dehydrated all the time, and it can affect your mood. It can make you just more cranky and not happy, basically. And sometimes that could just simply fix by drinking a glass of water. If you're hungry, sometimes you can overeat because you're dehydrated. So making sure that you drink a lot of fluids is good. One of the ways you can tell if you're drinking enough fluids is actually by looking at the color of your urine. If it is a very dark yellow, that's a sign that says that you are dehydrated, basically. The closer that it looks like to clear water, that means you are more hydrated, and that is almost always a good thing to be fully hydrated.